It's not one of those things you ever think about. I should try to preserve all of this lest there be a genocide that destroys it all.
That's Palestinian chef and writer Laila El-Haddad, whose cookbook, The Gaza Kitchen, brought global attention to Gaza's vibrant food culture. Back in 2013, she was even featured on Anthony Bourdain's Parts Unknown.
All the food I've had so far in Gaza has been very different than in anything else I've had in the Arab world.
Yeah, it's kind of its own little gastronomical bubble.
Today, little remains of the markets and homes where Laila introduced Anthony to Gazan cuisine. Israel's bombardments and blockade have decimated Gaza's food systems and erased entire family lines.
Every time I make this now, I can't help but this, flood of memories comes crashing down. I think of my aunt who was killed in an Israeli airstrike in November. The entire house was blown to smithereens. The albums and the recipes. But suddenly, everything that I had written took on a renewed urgency.
What I've learned from Laila is that Gazan cuisine is beautiful, sophisticated, and diverse. But what does it mean to keep Gaza's culinary heritage alive? Amid a genocide, no less.
Assalamu alaikum, كيف حالك أمجد?
Marhaba.
شو أخبارك?
We're loading up on some essentials for Gazan cooking. Whole spices, some high-quality Palestinian tahini, and today's star ingredient, sumac.
Iranians also have sumac all the time.
Yes.
For us, it's kind of like, I see it as Parmesan cheese on like an
Yes.
Italian restaurant's
It's like
table.
a garnish.
we just put it on top a little bit.
Yeah. What's interesting about soumaiya, the dish I'm going to make today, is that it uses an inordinate amount of sumac.
It blows me away.
Which is very unusual even in other Arab cuisine.
All right.
So most people are probably familiar with sumac that looks like this. So I have a special treat that I've been saving just for you, Yara.
Oh my God, so this is the actual sumac.
Oh my God, it still smells like it came off the tree. This is what sumac looks like.
Wow.
For most Palestinians, even though it figures as a major component in their food, just because of the way that our community has been fractured and fragmented and occupied and prevented from visiting their land, very few people have ever seen what sumac actually looks like.
Laila is showing me how to make several dishes that highlight Gaza's incredible cuisine. And one of the most iconic ones is sumagia, a hearty, heavily spiced stew with lamb, chard, chickpeas, tahini, and most importantly, sumac. Lots and lots of sumac.
So we are boiling the sumac berries.
Okay.
Like we're just kind of making an infusion or a tea. And that's gonna be like the base of the stew. It's kind of like the quintessential Gazan dish, right?
Okay.
It's what's most synonymous with Gaza.
But for Laila, this stew, sumagia, is a deeply personal dish that's intertwined with a painful loss. Like many Palestinians, Laila grew up stateless. She spent most of her childhood in Saudi Arabia and her summers in Gaza. But in 2010, she returned to Gaza to gather research for her cookbook, a work of love and longing for a homeland that she'd always known from a distance. In the process, she spent hours learning from her aunt, Hani, who was the keeper of her family's recipes. But it turned out to be one of the last times the two would see each other, because in November 2023, an Israeli airstrike killed Hani, along with other members of her family.
I think of the house, I think of the kitchen, I think of the living room. She was showing me the pictures in it, and I have this recurring nightmare where I'm going through the rubble, looking for pictures. I was just in shock, and my immediate thought was, oh my gosh, I have this interview that I did with her, this 2-hour-long interview. And I went back and I poured through it, and I was crying. And by the end of the 2 hours, she said to me, but wait, I really want to show you how your grandmother made sumagia, because that's the most important dish. And we were fasting, and it was Ramadan, and it was very close to sunset, and we were all hungry and hot. And I kind of just brushed her off, and I said, no, we're another day. And I just put the interview down, and I couldn't believe it. I was like, oh my God, why didn't I just say to her, please go ahead and show me how to, of course, one never expects that the entire family will get wiped out. I still feel, I always feel, every time I make it, I feel like there's something missing, I swear. And I constantly wonder, how did she make it? What was the missing? What's the trick? Okay.
Basically, her spirit almost lives on in this dish. I mean, by recreating this,
yes,
we're sort of connecting with an experience you had with her.
Absolutely. And this has been the case, I should say, for generations of Palestinians in Gaza who never had a chance to visit their ancestral village or town that was destroyed, depopulated, from which their grandparents were ethnically cleansed. But I found it was remarkable that they maintained the culinary legacy of that village and the memory of their villages and towns through the food.
It's almost like a historical DNA.
It's a culinary memory
tracing-
map, right? Is the best way to put it.
A culinary memory map.
Yes.
I love that.
Yeah.
For many Palestinians like Laila, cuisine is not just something you eat. It's a cultural record documenting generations of hardship and forced displacement under Israeli occupation, but also the resilience and innovation it's necessitated. And nowhere is that more pronounced than in Gaza.
So in 1948, the population of Gaza tripled overnight.
Whoa.
Yes, many of the Palestinians who currently live in Gaza are descendants of Palestinians that were dispossessed from their land, and they still very much consider themselves from those places.
Zionist militias razed some 530 Palestinian villages and drove over 750,000 Palestinians from their homes during this period. It's referred to as the Nakba, or catastrophe in Arabic. So when Palestinian refugees fled to Gaza, the unique traditions of all these individual villages came together into a big culinary melting pot. This one tiny area of land is filled with so much food diversity that a traditional dish in one part of Gaza may seem totally foreign in another.
There are all these like micro variations. Someone who currently lives in Deir el-Balah in central Gaza might say they're from Karatiya or from Beit Rima, and their cuisine is very different. They would use a lot of kishik, fermented wheat and dairy products, not so much garlic and chilies the way that the urban areas of Gaza might.
The survivors of the 1948 ethnic cleansing of Palestine developed crucial skills that allowed them to survive their harrowing journeys. And those skills were woven into the recipes they took with them to Gaza.
You know, I interviewed a lot of Nakba survivors in Gaza, and one of them, she has these vivid memories of foraging for ba'la, for purslane, that grew around orange trees in northern Gaza, and how they would hide there from the Zionist militias, and how they would take that ba'la, and how that was all they survived on for days. Now 100% almost of the modern day Gaza Strip population has been displaced, not once and twice, but 5 or 6 times over, moving from place to place. You know, a friend of mine sent me a video and pictures saying to me, you know, Laila, I managed to forage for some sorrel, homeland, as they call it, hamasis, which is a wood sorrel, and purslane, of course, ba'la. But he said, these were things I heard about from my grandmother, and he's also a refugee. And it was through this knowledge, this inherited knowledge, that had it not been for these grandmothers, none of us would have probably survived this genocide. We wouldn't have known what to do with these ingredients.
I am getting goosebumps.
Food is a testament to the enduring spirit, I think, and the dignity of the Palestinian people.
To truly understand Gaza's culinary roots, we have to start at the beginning. And that means going back 5,000 years, because Gaza City is one of the oldest inhabited cities anywhere in the world. It was a gateway linking Africa, Asia, and the Mediterranean Sea, making it coveted territory for the many empires that once controlled it: the Egyptians, Assyrians, Romans, Byzantines, and so on.
Gaza was at the nexus of historic trade and spice routes and was once a major trading hub. And you see that reflected in the intense and abundant use of spices, for example. In the heat, it's a very fiery cuisine.
And that's exactly why, as we finished preparing our sumagia, we added even more spices. Whole dill seeds, garlic, red and green hot chilies, all coarsely ground in a zibdiya, a giant mortar and pestle that's essential in Gazan cooking.
My grandmother, she would say, don't grind like a sissy, grind like you mean it, you know? And she would say to me, put some muscle into it. So she would say, you have to hold this down, and with a firm hand, in a circular motion, go like this.
Oh, wow.
That's when you know it's ready.
We've talked about a lot of spices, a
Yes.
lot of heat,
Yes.
but also seafood. And I would assume that's the third kind of pillar of the cuisine.
There's a whole, you know, very sophisticated, very umami, very intense seafood repertoire of Gaza.
The sea is the lifeblood of coastal communities in Gaza, but Israel throttled access to much of Gaza's fishing waters in 2007 when it imposed a blockade on land, air, and sea. It imposed tight restrictions on how far Palestinian fishing boats were allowed from shore, and Israeli gunships often shot bullets at Palestinians while they tried to fish.
This is the grand irony, that you have Gaza sitting there with direct access to the coast, and it could be as foreign to them as Mars, because access to the seafood itself is so limited.
These are folks who've been fishing for centuries, right?
Yes.
Centuries upon centuries upon
Absolutely.
centuries.
Yeah.
It's part of the cuisine, it's part of the culture.
Yes.
But because of Israel's restrictions on maritime access, they simply cannot fish their own fish.
Fish is no longer, sadly, a part of sort of the everyday. It's a luxury, right? But other than that, you have some things like crabs being among them, sardines, that are easy to catch off of the shore and that are still pretty affordable to most people. I'm a big seafood person.
Oh, I got a little cramp.
Okay.
Oh my god. Oh my
You
god. I've
lose
actually never held a crab
Oh,
before.
really?
Should I?
You can do it from the,
Oh wow, I can't. Yeah. Oh my god.
Yes.
I'm sort of. Oh my god.
yeah.
It terrifies me. Oh my
So.
god. I think I'll just. Oh my god. It's. So you grew up touching them. Okay. So.
Yes, I grew up actually catching them. It's one of my earliest memories. Yara, look, so it's this side. This is the eyes, so you want to do it in the opposite side.
Ah. Okay.
There we go. Ugh.
Oh. Okay.
Ooh, that's a big one.
Yeah, you just go like this, and these are just all the intestines or guts or whatever. So in Gaza, this is how it's just, you're left with this, you put the stuffing in here, and you roast it.
For the stuffing, we smashed together spices and then folded in another quintessential Gazan staple, a fermented hot chili paste called shatta.
And they look so nice. For a lot of other Palestinians who were from outside of Gaza, who were refugees, this was not a dish they were familiar with.
Right.
But they did tell me that now, under the current conditions, this is something people are able to catch, and you know, it's nutritious, and of course it's not super filling, but it is one of the things that is available to people where very little else is, right, including animal protein and so on, especially in the north of Gaza.
After October 7th, 2023, Israel restricted the flow of food entering Gaza to a trickle. Videos show repeated instances of Israeli forces shooting into crowds near aid trucks and opening fire on fishing boats. Over 1.8 million people in Gaza are facing extremely critical levels of hunger, according to the UN.
The food system is being actively destroyed and targeted, and we saw this play out before our eyes, that even the ingredients that we were using to make these traditional dishes were at such a fast pace being completely erased.
Greenhouses have been
Yes,
destroyed. The
yeah.
farmland has been destroyed. The water sources have been destroyed.
The systematic destruction of the food system, including the olive trees, of the sea, of the access to all of these places. And this has been the case, I should say, for generations of Palestinians in Gaza and elsewhere.
Is
Yeah.
food now your lifeline to your homeland?
Food is absolutely a lifeline to Gaza, to my homeland. It's not like I'm just casually cooking. I am thinking, my gosh, this is literally one of the only things left that has not been destroyed.
So what is Gazan cuisine? It's what happens in Laila's kitchen when she shows her daughter just the right trick for making dakka, a sort of smashed clay pot salad with dill and Gazan green chilies. And it's the way she repeats the instructions her own grandmother once told her.
That's it. No, it takes some muscle, Bayan. Yalla. ممتاز. شامة ريحتها? She's like, now I can smell it.
I mean, I think this is interesting because this is,
course,
you're passing
this is
on
one of
something
the-
very integral.
This is one of the best ways. And the thing is, people just assume that children will somehow imbibe by osmosis,
Right.
you know, culture, language, everything. But here, I think we have to be really deliberate about it, you know, especially as Palestinians. The cuisine is a reflection, of course, of Palestinian rootedness to the land. And it's especially the case in Gaza, where so many people have been uprooted. And in a way, the cycle is kind of repeating itself, because now I feel like I'm at the receiving end. I'm one of those people that I was writing about, those people being Palestinians in Gaza who were ethnically cleansed, who were forced from their villages and towns, and whose stories lived on through their food.